All right, welcome back to the channel. So Errol Spence Jr. is back at it on his Twitter. He's doing the Twitter thing, man, and I enjoy his Twitter because he gives these little one-line clowning moves that I find quite funny. And this time he does it to Keith Thurman. I know Errol Spence tries to be is it circumspect or tries to be, tries not to come too direct at it. Dog, come on, man. We know what you're talking about. He said Keith Thurman that money that gaslight must be coming on in that money because you acting mighty broke and desperate. That's what he has to be implying about Keith Thurman, and I disagree, man. I disagree. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel, man. There used to be a time, maybe about a year and a half ago, that it was in vogue to make fun of Keith one-time Thurman for ducking, right? Because every conversation he'd have about Errol Spence Jr., he would come with some deflecting conversation that would let you know that fight ain't about to happen next. Say stuff like, "Yeah, young man, I see you, young man. Get your weight up a little bit, and we can do it down the line." All of that stuff. You remember when Keith Thurman was like the man at welterweight? Well, that's not the case anymore because Errol Spence Jr. is the man. Manny Pacquiao is a Hall of Fame legendary placeholder in the weight class, and you got Terrence Crawford, who was high on many people's pound for pound lists, all in the weight division. And Keith Thurman lost to Manny Pacquiao, so Keith Thurman's weight is not quite what it used to be. So people are clowning on him now that he is acting very aggressive, because do not get it mixed up. Keith Thurman is going full aggressive. Keith Thurman ain't retiring. He ain't going away. He's saying that he wants to fight with Sean Porter. He wants to fight with Errol Spence Jr. He wants to rematch with Manny Pacquiao. He take a fight with Danny Garcia. He wants to fight Terrence Crawford. He said he wants to fight anybody, right? So what's the problem? You know what I mean? Now, Errol saying, "Hey, man, maybe that money's getting low. That's why you're acting like that." I can understand why Errol could be clowning like that, because Errol's in a unique position when it comes to Keith Thurman, where he really does have a reason to hold a grudge against Keith Thurman, because Keith Thurman prolonged that dude's elevation to the top of the weight class, and Keith Thurman didn't want to be the body because he didn't want to be the body that Errol Spence Jr. got, and to elevate him to the top of the sport. So Errol had to go all the way to the UK, take a harder route, because he went to the UK to beat Kell Brook, right? And then even then, he beats Kell Brook and Sean Porter. Keith Thurman's still acting like he's not one to fight him. But again, like I said, that was a year ago. For me, none of that applies anymore. None of it applies anymore. Keith Thurman is no longer the WBA champion. He's no longer the WBC champion, right? So there is no need for him. There is no ducking going on with him, right? He's saying, "I want this fight. I want that fight. I want that fight." And if you look at everybody in the welterweight division, right? Every fighter in the welterweight division, without exception, all of them should give Keith Thurman a fight. Every one of them, dude. Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Terrence Crawford, Manny Pacquiao, and Errol Spence Jr. All of them should have Keith Thurman way up top of the list of the fighters that they should fight next, because Keith Thurman has deserved it. Keith Thurman's not some flash in the pan. Keith Thurman's not some guy. It's not some guy that you don't know what he's about, right? He's a two-time champion at welterweight, and he beat Sean Porter, and he beat Danny Garcia. He beat Robert the Ghost Guerrero. He beat Josecito Lopez. He had a very good fight with Manny Pacquiao. And quite honestly, dude, I think, man, if he was the same Keith Thurman he was before, I think he beats Manny Pacquiao. That's my take on it. I think Manny Pacquiao got him right at the right time. But regardless, Keith Thurman is who else? Like, for example, if Errol Spence Jr. wasn't fighting Danny Garcia, right? Just say Danny Garcia is not there. Terrence Crawford's is not an option. And Manny Pacquiao is still intent on ducking Errol Spence. Because I think Manny Pacquiao, man, he ain't fighting Errol Spence. Anyway, if it was between Keith Thurman and Sean Porter, and Errol Spence and Danny Garcia and if these guys weren't champions, dude, Keith Thurman has everything on his resume to deserve an Errol Spence Jr. fight. So I'm not going to hold the grudge over from Keith Thurman from when he was champion, because he's not champion anymore. He doesn't have those responsibilities. Now the people that are champions are the ones that have the responsibility, and their responsibility is to take on the best fighters in the division. So when Terrence Crawford laughs off Keith Thurman and and Bo Mack talks about there ain't no money, that Al Heyman ain't putting up no money for the fight, and that's why we're not fighting him. And yeah, man, I'm only interested in the straps. Nah, dog. Keith Thurman's level of experience, his accolades in the ring are beyond you being able to pull that crap on him. Okay? One loss to Manny Pacquiao does not. Manny Pacquiao beat him. Terrence Crawford didn't beat him, right? Manny Pacquiao beat him. Errol Spence didn't beat him. And Manny Pacquiao beat him when he was coming off of a 2-year layoff, had one tune-up off a 2-year layoff, and he has beaten better fighters in the 147 pounds than Terrence Crawford has, without a doubt. If you look at Keith Thurman's resume at 147 and Terrence Crawford's resume at 147, there's no comparison between the two. Keith Thurman is taking on the better competition. Keith Thurman is the more proven guy at 147 pounds. So he should take the fight. Now, Errol Spence Jr., like I said, he's got the Danny Garcia fight, but still, if Errol Spence Jr. was in a situation like if there was the ultimate situation in boxing where there was one champion and Errol Spence Jr. was the champion, Keith Thurman would be high in that ranking system and would be deserving of a fight as much as any other guy in that division. So, and then as far as the money going, so it's like, Terrence, Keith Thurman has been on a successful pay-per-view. You have not. Like, there's no proof. I don't see how, really, if Keith Thurman is having a conversation with Terrence Crawford about who's the more popular fighter between the two of them, dude, Terrence Crawford is going to have a hard time talking to Keith Thurman, making an argument for himself over Keith Thurman. Because I'm pretty sure Keith Thurman's viewership, and I'm going to have to go back and look at his viewership numbers, but they're easily on par with Terrence Crawford. And I can tell you, of somebody that does videos about all of the fighters, so I have my own analytics, and I can, from like my 40,000 subscribers or whatever, and 60, 70,000 views in a particular day, I can see, which fighters, who and from where, because you got the analytics behind the scenes. You can see like who's watching the video, where do they live, or are they in Texas? Are they in the UK? Are they in Florida or whatever? Dude, you'd be very, very surprised about the analytics on Keith Thurman, man. Keith Thurman is like somebody that has a good fan base. He has a dormant fan base because of all of the criticism that was taking place, but I wouldn't be surprised if Keith Thurman's fan base wasn't every bit Terrence Crawford's fan base is. In fact, they probably have in large degree the same fan base. It's just going to take Keith Thurman getting a big win and getting on a roll and looking like a dominant fighter to get his fan base more active, man. But that's no difference between him and Terrence Crawford. Look at what's happening to Terrence Crawford's fan base, and he's winning. It's falling apart because he's not fighting anybody. People aren't going to let you get away with that. Like, people are going to support Terrence Crawford in America. This is at least my take, or at least for me. I'll support Terrence Crawford, and I want Terrence Crawford to do well. But dude, as a black fight fan in the United States, and somebody that considers himself someone that will support American fighters, dude, you can't sit up there and duck other American fighters and act and treat them like they're jokes and have somebody still wanting to support you. You know what I mean? You treat Gary Russell Jr. like he's some joke that doesn't deserve to be in the ring with you while you looking to give your next payday to Alexander Boost Putin. How's somebody going to respect that, man? If you're telling, Sean, I can't fight Sean Porter, I can't fight Keith Thurman, how are people going to respect that, man? If Keith Thurman is the one that's getting out there and saying he's going to want to fight these guys, and he's going to fight other Americans like he's already fought other American champions, hey, man, I'm going to stand with the dude because I think he's doing right by boxing. And I don't think Terrence Crawford's doing right by boxing. And this lame excuse from Bo Mack, dude, you just take a little bit more time and think about how that sounds. That Al Heyman, that sounds like that's what Eddie Hearn said. Like when Deontay Wilder said, hey, man, Your $50 million is in the, it's in the mail. $50 million. I got it for you. Eddie Hearn talking about AJ. And then they turned out, then Eddie Hearn says, "Oh, who are you from? A guy from Alabama. Where you going to get that money from?" That's the same thing that's the same thing Bomac just did to Keith Thurman. Now, where are you going to get the money from? If you're going to need to send us a contract and a boatload of money. Dude, why need to send a boatload of money for you, Terrence? I mean, who's getting a boatload? A boatload. You need a boatload to fight Keith Thurman? Tells you ain't very confident about beating Keith Thurman, man, because there ain't no way you got a boatload of money for fighting Egas Kalbanakis. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think, and with that, I'm out. Deuces.